Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Explainer. Today, we're essentially building a time machine. Well, okay, a linguistic time machine anyway. Have you ever completely messed something up and wished you could just hit rewind and change what happened? Standard reality says, no way, you can't do that. But grammar? Grammar says absolutely you can. Today, we're tackling the third conditional. Specifically, we're looking at the unreal in the past. We're going to learn exactly how to rewrite history and explore alternate realities. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive right into this. I want you to imagine, just for a second, what if humans had paws instead of hands? I know, it's a completely wild, literally impossible warm-up exercise from our source material, but it's perfect. It completely sets the stage for the kind of mental gymnastics we're about to do. We're training our brains to look at what's real and then confidently talk about what isn't. So think about how this absurd scenario would actually play out. If people had paws, machines would have to be constructed differently. We wouldn't be able to turn knobs, right? This perfectly demonstrates the core concept of what grammarians call the contrary to fact conditional. We're actively contrasting our current, tangible reality, having human hands with opposable thumbs, with an alternate reality that's just downright impossible. And here's the thing, once you understand how to build these impossible scenarios in your head, applying the grammar rules to your own past events becomes a total breeze. All right, Section 1, the alternate reality concept. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we take that contrary to fact idea and apply it directly to our own personal histories. Look at the stark contrast between these two statements. First, we have the harsh, factual reality. Actually, I slipped on the stairs, I broke my arm. Ouch. It's in the simple past tense, and it is firmly set in stone. But then, listen to this grammatical alternate timeline. If I hadn't slipped on the stairs, I wouldn't have broken my arm. See what we did there? By using this specific structure, we're safely exploring a reality where that accident just never happened. We aren't changing the facts, we're simply expressing how things could have been different. And honestly, this is exactly how we process regret, relief, and reflection in everyday life. So, how do we actually build this? Section 2, master the core formula. To build these alternate timelines correctly, you can't just toss a bunch of past tense words together and hope for the best. You need a very specific structural formula. Think of this like, well, it's basically grammatical math. Let's walk through the two critical halves of the equation. On the left side, we've got the if clause. This is the condition, the trigger, for the alternate reality. The formula here is the word if plus the past perfect tense. So, for example, if I had known. Then on the right side, we have the result clause. This is what happens in that new timeline. The formula here is would have plus the past participle, like would have helped. So if plus past perfect on one side, would have plus past participle on the other. It is a precise two-part system. And this brilliantly illustrates how the math actually comes together. Look at the reality first. Actually, they did not study. Therefore, they failed. Oof, a super common, sometimes tragic reality. But now, let's apply our formula to flip it. We take the if plus past perfect, if they had studied, and we combine it with the would have plus past participle. They would have passed. If they had studied, they would have passed. Boom. We literally just used grammar to turn a failed exam into a successful alternate reality. This exact structure gives you the power to articulate the what-ifs of life with absolute clarity. Moving right along to Section 3, would have versus could have. Okay, once you've got the basic formula down, it's time to look at the nuance. Because the English language is incredibly precise, and sometimes changing just one single word completely alters the certainty of your whole alternate timeline. Let's look at these two nearly identical scenarios. First up, if I had had enough money, I would have bought a car. Second one, if I had had enough money, I could have bought a car. What's the actual difference? Well, our source material makes a really subtle but absolutely vital distinction here. Would have expresses a desired or predictable result. It's a guarantee. If the cash was there, that car purchase was definitely happening. But could have simply expresses a possible option. It basically just means you would have been able to buy it, but hey, maybe you would have saved the money instead. Would means certainty, could is just capability.
Now for my favorite part, Section 4, the casual speech exception.
All right, lean in for this one, because I'm going to let you in on a bit of an insider secret. We literally just spent all this time mastering the strict standard formula, right? But look really closely at this quote. If you would have told me about the problem, I would have helped you. Did you catch the error? According to standard English grammar, placing would have inside the if clause is totally incorrect. It should be if you had told me. But our source notes that in casual, informal speech, a lot of native speakers use this broken structure all the time. It's really important for you to know the strict rule for writing in formal situations, but it's equally important to recognize this broken rule when you're just listening to everyday conversation. And speaking of everyday conversation, let's talk about how this grammar actually sounds out loud. These formulas create some pretty bulky phrases, right? I would have helped you. Native speakers are all about efficiency, so these auxiliary verbs get heavily reduced in speech. If you had becomes if you'd, would have becomes would have. And honestly, sometimes I would have compresses entirely into a super quick phonetic sound like I'd have. If you told me, I'd have helped you. If you want your spoken English to sound natural and fluid, mastering these phonetic compressions is just as crucial as mastering the grammar itself. Let's bring it all together. Section 5, putting it into practice. Because, grammar rules are really only useful if you can actually apply them to your daily life. Let's move to and see how this builds a really common scenario. Imagine driving in the snow. It's stressful, it's slippery, and it's a prime setup for a classic unreal pass scenario. Say you get your car completely stuck in a snowbank because you just weren't prepared. How do you express your frustration? You use the formula. You construct a scenario where past preparation prevents that terrible outcome. If we had had chains in the car, we wouldn't have gotten stuck in the snow. And here are a few more rapid-fire everyday mishaps straight from exercise 16. Think about a health scare. If Rhea had gone to the hospital, she would have gotten better more quickly. Or how about an absolute travel nightmare? If Tim hadn't lost his passport, he wouldn't have missed the flight home. And another super common one. If you hadn't stayed out all night, you wouldn't have slept all day. The unreal in the past conditional is genuinely the perfect storytelling tool. It's how we vent about past mistakes, analyze what went wrong, and learn from the things we simply cannot change. So, the absolutely crucial point is this. This grammar rule isn't just some boring academic exercise, it's literally how we navigate regret, relief, and the whole human experience. So I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge today. Think about your own life right now. How would you rewrite yesterday? What is something that happened to you yesterday or maybe last week? And how would you rewrite that reality using the unreal past formula? Play around with the if plus past perfect, followed by the would have plus past participle. Try out the would have versus could have distinction. I promise the more you use this grammatical time machine, the more natural it's going to feel. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you in the next one.